Good evening, meteorologist Mike Linden coming at you live from the MyRadar studio here in Orlando, Florida. It is Saturday, August 28th. Again, good evening and welcome to our special coverage of Hurricane Ida as it gets set to likely be a very interesting next day or so in the Gulf of Mexico and along the Gulf Coast of the United States. Again, you've seen our coverage throughout the day today from meteorologist Jamie Martin. Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson is off. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the MyRadar app, but I really want to know where you are watching from. So wherever you are watching across all of the various MyRadar social media platforms, let me know in the chat. I've got it pulled up right here in front of me here. So let me know where you're watching from. And if you have any questions for me, I will do my best to answer them as the chat goes on. But we begin with a look at the MyRadar app as Hurricane Ida has undergone some pretty wild intensification as it worked its way into the Gulf of Mexico. We're talking some considerably warm water here, roughly 85, 86 or so degrees Fahrenheit, mind you, which is warmer than normal for this time of year, just a little bit. And that is exactly what storms of this nature totally love. Now, right now, I have the hurricane layer turned on, and if I tap on the storm, you can see the latest from the National Hurricane Center. It is, as it stands right now, a Category 2 hurricane with wind speeds of 104 miles per hour. Now, it is chugging along here. It will continue to move north-northwest here, and it is expected to continue to intensify. You can see expected to reach Category 3 and then potentially Category 4 as it makes landfall sometime tomorrow afternoon. Now, if that stands right there as a Category 4, I mean, this would be a pretty significant hurricane impacting the United States. Of course, that would be a major hurricane, anything Category 3 and above. And you can see the path from the National Hurricane Center here has the storm going through a portion of New Orleans there, making landfall just off the coast of Homa, pushing north-northwest toward Baton Rouge, and eventually hooking eastward and working its way up northward toward Tupelo and weakening significantly at that point down toward a rather tropical storm at that point, likely just being a pretty wild inland flooding event at that point. But we will be watching this very closely. You can see the pink colors there along the southern coastline of Louisiana. Those are hurricane warnings and storm surge warnings that are in place. We're talking several feet of storm surge, potentially upwards of 10 to near 15 feet of storm surge that are in place, or rather that is expected along the southern coastline of Louisiana. The National Hurricane Center, those folks there have really been keying in on here on this area right here on every path update that they have put out. There really hasn't been much of a change or much of an alteration from this area right here. So they are really keying in on the southern coastline of Louisiana. But for folks that live in Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, and even people that live in the panhandle of Florida, you can see here, Mobile, Alabama, that's a hurricane warning as well, or a tropical storm warning and storm surge warning. So conditions could still be rather unpleasant even if you do not live within the cone. So right now, the core of the storm is still kind of just sitting over the Gulf. There is nothing in its way. Cuba is not in the way. The Dominican Republic, any of those Caribbean islands, nothing is in the way right now. And you can see the eye kind of starting to form there. That is an indication of some strengthening occurring. And if I actually turn off, just for the moment, we'll turn off the hurricane layer there, and I'll turn on the winds. In fact, I'll turn off the radar too, just for right now. You can actually see really cool there on that visualization from the winds. I'm going to turn the opacity way up. Look at those winds there on the right front quadrant, that yellow portion of the storm. That's where we're likely to find the strongest winds when this thing makes landfall. That's likely to be where we find potentially tornadic development as well. That would be, as it stands, the metro of the city of New Orleans. So that'll definitely be something to watch. Coincidentally, tomorrow, by the way, August 29th, it is the 16-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina making landfall in New Orleans. How about that? But there you can see, I mean, just with the wind layer on in MyRadar, you can see Ida just sitting alone there in the Gulf of Mexico. You know, funny enough, we actually have right over here, we actually have another system This is Nora, a Category 1 hurricane that's going to ride the western coastline of Mexico, impacting the Baja. Wild stuff, right? But especially when you see the wind layer turned on, just to see the visualization. It's really neat. Let me turn the radar back on. And what we're going to do here is we're actually going to take a look at some video from MyRadar Stormchaser Aaron Jajak, who is on his way to New Orleans. He is going to be chasing Ida on the ground. This is some video he shot on a flight to New Orleans. All is quiet relatively right now, but of course, Aaron is he's experienced. He knows what he's doing here, and he knew to get down to that area sooner rather than later. In fact, I just spoke to him on the phone not too long ago, and he is in a line waiting to get a rental car with over 200 people. Aaron, of course, in amongst a lot of folks there. But look at this time lapse here, flying into New Orleans. A pea soupy kind of evening there along the horizon. A lot of moisture in the air here for the Big Easy, and it's very likely that things are going to get rather messy here into the next couple of days. Let's jump into the graphics here, Damien. Before we do that, let's take a look at the sole camera, live camera that I have to show you, courtesy of our partners at WeatherStem. This is out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, on the LSU campus. This is Alex Box Stadium. I believe this is where the Tigers play their baseball there in the foreground. But not too much going on, but I figured I would at least show you the camera. It is likely to be a lot more active on this camera heading into tomorrow afternoon. Now, let's jump into the graphics. Of course, I've got the very capable Damien in the back running the show here. We've got Chris in the back as well. Of course, it is kind of an all systems go here thing at MyRadar. And heading into tomorrow, you will see more of the team, including meteorologist Jamie Martin, and brand new to the team, meteorologist Erica Lopez. She will be joining us tomorrow as well as myself too. So you get to see the whole team. Again, Leslie is out. So, Damien, let's jump into the graphics. We're looking at the infrared imagery of Ida, and I'm actually going to zoom in here, and you can see the eye. I'm going to have to really pause the data here, but right there, I mean, that is indicative of a really strong storm, or strengthening storm, I should say. If I widen things out, you can see that not too long ago, in fact, if I bring this back, this is a 6-hour loop. Notice how once this thing got into the Gulf of Mexico, it has really started to come together. Particularly, you're looking at the inflow. Oops, I'm clicking a bunch of stuff here off camera. Particularly when you are talking about this inflow here. This is just a pipeline of moisture coming in from this incredibly warm Gulf of Mexico, just trying to wrap around the center of convection here. And that is what is going to continue for the next 12 to 24 hours here for Ida, because there's just nothing in the way, right? And we already looked in the MyRadar app. There are numerous hurricane warnings already in place. That those are those pink colors there, which are in place for the city of New Orleans, as well as most of the coastline of Louisiana, extending as far west as Lake Charles. Pushing into central Mississippi, though, a tropical storm warning, the purple color there, that is in place, as well as for the coastline there for Alabama. In fact, if I widen out the view here, again, just a better look at things, flash flood watches in effect as well. They're hard to see, though, because they're underneath the hurricane watches and hurricane warnings that are in place for the Gulf Coast there, particularly Louisiana. You are running out of time, folks. If you do live along that coastline of Louisiana, now is the time to prepare. So I just have word from Damien in the back that the WeatherStem camera is good. In fact, it's actually a pretty shot there along the horizon. Again, courtesy of our partners at WeatherStem. You can actually see some cars driving on the roads there, but look at that convection along the horizon, those booming thunderstorms. This is all out ahead of Ida as it works its way northward. Wild stuff. Damien, let's jump back to the graphics here. Looking at the water vapor imagery. Not too long ago, before we got into the stream here, I was kind of chatting with meteorologist Jamie Martin. Of course, he is a native Floridian, so hurricanes are totally his bag. And I was talking to him about just looking at this imagery here. You see a lot of moisture in it, but not a lot of dry air. I mean, that's up here, up over Texas and Oklahoma, but there's just nothing getting in the way of this storm. So again, this is why a couple of days ago, meteorologists that were watching this event were starting to really start to key in on it, considering anytime a storm gets into the Gulf of Mexico, it's kind of all systems go, really, because of this, how warm the water is. I mean, sea surface temperatures upwards of the mid to high 80s. I mean, it's a good thing that this storm isn't veering even farther to the west. I mean, you're talking almost the low 90s there off the coastline of Houston. I mean, it's peak season, folks. This is to be expected. But this is going to be kind of the number one threat that we are watching for, and the National Hurricane Center is deeming life-threatening, that being the storm surge along the southern coastline of Louisiana. 10 to 15 feet of storm surge, let alone the dangerous surf conditions. But the storm surge, that's water being pushed inland. And you don't want to mess with this, particularly from Lake Charles all the way eastward across the southern coastline of Mississippi and across almost all of Alabama as well. So Mobile Bay included in that. And folks, even if you live in the Pensacola area of Florida and even pushing eastward and along the Panhandle, it's not going to be the friendliest of conditions there, even if you are not necessarily under a particular watch or warning. Again, right now, Ida is a Category 2 hurricane, but it is expected to, once it nears landfall tomorrow afternoon, potentially working its way all the way up to Category 4. That would be pretty wild, folks. Wind speeds of 130 miles per hour. Again, if you are watching in the chat, let me know where you are watching from. Yeah, 130 miles per hour. That would be pretty wild. That's kind of on the low end of Category 4. But nonetheless here, folks, I mean, you are talking about some catastrophic damage here with the potential for some pretty nasty power outages here, wind, as well as the inland flooding out of this. The rain over the next couple of days for the folks as well, even if you don't live along the coast, it's going to be fairly nasty. Again, that's heading into tomorrow afternoon, potential landfall. And landfall has kind of been a bit of all over the place. We've seen some model estimates as late as tomorrow evening into Monday morning. And as you can see here, the National Hurricane Center kind of speeding things up a little bit, maybe bringing things inland a little earlier than expected into tomorrow afternoon. We will continue to monitor that, of course, as the night goes on. Continuing, though, as we head into the early stages of the work week, you can see Ida losing gas all the way into Kentucky, but bringing with it some heavy rainfall, likely some messy conditions too. So I've got a look here at the HRRR. This is a high-resolution model run. So I show you this one because I'm kind of limited with what I can show you because of how high-resolution this model is. So we'll advance the clock here out to 11 o'clock this evening. So still, of course, no landfall at this time. But look at this. I paused the clock. Look at that, 9 a.m. I mean, that's right off the coastline there of Houma. So again, I see this and it makes me think that we need to adjust our scheduling here at MyRadar because of how fast things could get going. But bear in mind, this storm wants to remain over the water. It doesn't want to go over land. It wants to be over water as long as it possibly can. So notice things really slow down there as we head into the afternoon, potentially upwards of 2 p.m. near Houma there. That would be a landfall pretty darn close to it, and it's right there on the center line there from the path from the National Hurricane Center. You don't necessarily have to go by the center line. We just kind of put it there. You really want to go by the whole cone. Anywhere in that cone is in play, folks. Let's advance a little more. We'll head into late Sunday evening by 10 p.m. You can see the most of that storm is inland. But if I grab my arrow tool, you can see that all that inflow there could be some tornadic thunderstorms in there, especially with these winds coming in right here over New Orleans, kind of pushing water northward too. Ugly stuff. Again, looking at the power outages here, it's wild. You can actually see the eye right there. Did you see that on the power outage index here? Let me grab it back. So more than likely could be losing power here. So again, you're running out of time if you live, let alone on the coast, but if you live in New Orleans, Lake Charles, you are running out of time if you need to make your home hurricane strong. Again, hurricanestrong.org for more information from our wonderful partners at Flash. Again, make sure your cell phones are charged. Make sure you have a way to receive watches and warnings. I didn't bring it with me. It's at home. I will bring it with me for coverage tomorrow. But a cell phone power bank, I can't recommend those things enough. They're really fantastic little devices and a way to keep your cell phone charged in the event you are to lose power. And keep in mind, you need to listen to whatever your local emergency management officials are saying. If you are ordered to evacuate, and you decide to stick it out, and you were to call the police to come and help you, that's where things get a little tough tomorrow, because they're not going to put themselves in a situation where they could put themselves in harm's way, especially in an evacuation zone. So please, 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 please adhere to what local emergency management officials are saying if you live in one of these areas impacted by Ida. Again, the arrival of those strong winds for the folks that live along the coastline, you're going to feel it into tomorrow morning. And then from there, it's kind of all day tomorrow. Not a good idea to be out on the roadways or really doing much of anything if you live along the coastline of Mississippi even and Louisiana. And let alone the storm surge. Look at all that rain over the next 72 hours. I mean, 20 plus inches of rain, folks. That's upwards of 2 feet of rain, let alone all the water coming in off the coastline. Some ugly stuff here. And bear in mind, tomorrow, I mentioned this earlier, tomorrow the 16-year anniversary of Category 3 Hurricane Katrina making landfall in New Orleans. So the levee system that, of course, was in focus following that storm, certainly going to be put to the test heading into tomorrow. But as of now, of course, the National Hurricane Center taking the core of Ida a little bit farther to the west of New Orleans, but New Orleans still likely to be impacted here. When you're talking Category 3, which is what we are to likely see this get upgraded to over the next several hours, we're talking winds between 111 and 130 miles per hour. But what it is expected to make landfall as, or be really close to it, is a Category 4, wind speeds of 131 to 155 miles per hour, with the potential for power outages to last months, quite frankly. Damien, what I want to do here is I want to take a real quick look at the MyRadar app. If you want to switch back to it here, you should still have it. We actually have a few power outages that are just a few I wanted to take a look at here over the New Orleans Metro. This is a brand new feature to the app, by the way. If you go to the layers menu, it looks like a stack of cards there on the bottom. Scroll to the bottom, power outages, and that's how they're displayed on the map, these polygons. So I'm going to tap on this one here. And you can see it's a relatively small outage, roughly 1.5%, about 2,800 people or so. So this number likely to increase. We're likely going to see a lot of power outages out ahead of this tomorrow. So be sure that you are prepared now. Damien, let's take a look at some of these chat questions. There have been so many of them. I apologize for not looking at these questions sooner, folks. We've just got a lot going on here, as you can imagine. All right, so let me know in the chat where you are watching from. If you have any questions for myself or meteorologist Jamie Martin, or for anybody on the team, get your questions in now. I will try my best to answer them, and then we are going to get prepared for the next update. All right, so we've got a lot of folks watching here. We've got some people watching from Florida. So Florida not likely to be as impacted as what we initially anticipated, but there is still the likelihood of some rough surf, especially up toward the Panhandle. Donna on Facebook saying they're still cleaning up debris from Zeta last November. Of course, I mean, for people that are just joining us, of course, we are talking about Hurricane Ida, potentially set to impact New Orleans and the Gulf Coast as a major hurricane sometime tomorrow. New Orleans, and particularly Louisiana, Lake Charles last year, was hit by Laura and was hit so often last hurricane season that here we are in the real nasty part of the season this year. We're talking about the impact 16 years to the day of Katrina, of a potential another really nasty one. We've got someone watching from Gulfport, Mississippi. Big shout out to Gulfport. Beautiful airport there. Carolyn in Lake Charles. Be safe, Carolyn. Again, if you are watching in Lake Charles, I really hope that you are doing everything you need to do to be sure that you are keeping you and yours safe. A lot of folks watching in Florida, Idaho, West Virginia. Glad to have you, folks. And again, if you are not already, you can see them above my head here. Be sure to follow us across all of our social media platforms. You can see them above my head at MyRadar on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. We are also on Twitter at MyRadarWX, and brand new, as of a couple of days ago, at MyRadarES. That is at MyRadar ES. That is MyRadar Espanol. Meteorologist Erica Lopez is going to be sharing forecasts in Spanish, as well as be providing Spanish language social media posts, English forecasts, Spanish forecasts. We are super excited for Erica to get started. And what a what a weekend to get started, huh? Wild stuff. Oh my gosh, you guys are so many chat questions here. Remember, if you are not, if you didn't know already, we are watching on, or rather, we are streaming on Twitch as well, twitch.tv/MyRadarWX. Oh man, so much stuff going on here. We've got so many people watching. Ray watching from PCB, Florida. So Ray, you know all about major hurricanes for sure. When you consider Michael just a few years ago. We've got, what are the chances of the track changing to the Panhandle? I would say probably at this point, it's rather unlikely being this close to landfall, that being about 24 hours away potentially at this point. I would say it's unlikely to see that much of a significant shift. But I would say that if you do live in the Florida Panhandle, that you can already see that you're very likely to deal with probably some unpleasant weather heading into tomorrow. Thunderstorms, some gusty winds, and of course rough surf too. Of course, if you are not already and you are watching on YouTube, youtube.com/MyRadar, be sure to like this video. It really helps us out a lot. And then, of course, subscribe to the channel if you are not already. That way you always know whenever we go live or, of course, whenever we drop a new video. Of course, download the MyRadar app if you are not already. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I haven't talked about here, Damien. There's so much going on here. We've covered all the video I wanted to get to. I guess we'll probably begin to wrap things up. I will say, meteorologist Jamie Martin is going to be continuing our coverage through the rest of this evening, but it's kind of all systems go, a full team in tomorrow for coverage of Hurricane Ida as it makes landfall. You'll be seeing our coverage beginning early tomorrow morning, and that will continue on through the rest of the day, right up and through landfall. So be sure to follow us on our social media accounts. You'll also see some special coverage from MyRadar Stormchaser Aaron Jajak, who will be live on the ground in New Orleans, providing live video as well as some remote interviews. We're really excited for Aaron to get there. He's already there now. He's just getting set up. And then through most of tomorrow as well, we should actually have some guests joining us throughout the day. Really excited about that, including meteorologist Matthew Capucci. So if you were joining us through our coverage last week of Hurricane and Tropical Storm Henri affecting the northeastern United States, then you saw Matthew. Really excited to work with him again and gather his insight on what could be a rather significant meteorological event for the Gulf Coast of the United States. So again, I think that probably just about does it. Don't take the social media accounts, guys. Put those back up. We want to leave those up. Throw those back up there, those bugs. Again, be sure to follow us across all of our platforms. Again, for the guys in the back, Damien and Chris, it is likely to be a rather busy weekend here. Be sure to follow us. You can see them down there at the bottom. Be sure to follow us across all of our social media accounts. I think Damien's about to send them to the top of my head there too. There you go. We are everywhere. Be sure to follow us. And again, you can watch these live streams across social media and in the app as well. So from all of us on the team, stay safe and stay dry. We'll be back here through the rest of the evening with updates as they come in. And again, be safe. We'll catch you back here in the next one. See ya.